Good evening and welcome to the Rutland Town School Board meeting for December. If everyone could please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I will accept a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. Any discussion? All in favor?
Right. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we have staff and student highlights. I believe we have a slideshow or a little video from third grade.
Yes, let me bring that up. Sarah, is someone going to be presenting this as well while I...
No, I don't believe so.
All right, so...
It was just to share from third grade teachers.
You just got to...
Sure, yeah. So Emily Quigley and Patty Swinier Esposito are two of our third grade teachers, and one is very much under the weather today. So they wanted to just highlight Grandparents' Day that happened prior to Thanksgiving. So they had, it was really fun. I was running to the office. They wrote, for a writing piece, they wrote a few pieces about a favorite memory that they've had with a grandparent or a relative, and then they were able to share those. So here are some, talks about the process that they plan on writing their stories, and then they talk about a focus about details and dialogue with that clear beginning, middle, and end. And they type and then illustrate their stories. And then the accumulating activity is to invite grandparents in, and they're able to share their published pieces.
That's just all pictures.
Yeah, and so those were just pictures of grandparents in both of the classrooms.
Or relatives.
Or relatives, correct. Yep, grandparents or relatives. And the stories just varied. From pop-up, let me try espresso, to four-wheeling, hunting, reading, baking. It was wonderful.
Great. Thank you. I hope that the teacher that's under the weather feels better soon.
Thank you.
All right. Old business, CLA update. I don't really have anything to...
Community comments.
Oh, sorry. Almost skipped over that. Any teacher, staff, or community comments? Seeing none, we will move on. Oh, actually, Kelly, you just raised your hand.
I'm so sorry, I wasn't fast enough to find the hand raise button. I have a letter that was written by RTS teachers and staff. But unfortunately they weren't able to make it tonight, so they asked me to read it, so I just want to read it for you all and for the public here as well. It's brief, I promise. Thank you, Mrs. Mock. We want to take a moment to celebrate and recognize the incredible person you are. Over the past 26 and a half years, you've dedicated your heart and soul to the Rutland Town School community. While it's difficult to fully express how much your dedication has meant to all of us, we want you to know just how deeply we appreciate everything you've done for all of us. Your commitment to the school and its community has been truly extraordinary. From knowing our families inside and out to organizing every school function, your love and dedication are evident every day. You've been a steady presence, guiding us through challenges, busy days, and changes, always ensuring everything ran smoothly. Excuse me. Whether managing attendance, handling student records, arranging substitutes, or coordinating lunch coverage, you did it all with grace and efficiency. Even in the whirlwind of the school office, you remained calm, ensuring every task was completed with precision and care. What truly sets you apart, Mrs. Mock, is your kindness and the genuine care you showed to everyone around you. You were never just an employee. You have been a friend and confidant to all of us. You took the time to check in, remembering the little details about our lives, and always making us feel valued. You even called after hours to make sure we were doing okay, a gesture that meant a lot to all of us. You have always been one of the first to arrive and one of the last to leave. Your commitment to our school never wavered, even when the demands were overwhelming. Your tireless work ethic ensured everything was running smoothly, and you were always willing to solve problems, plan ahead, and lend a hand where needed. You've truly been the heart of this school. Mrs. Mock, you aren't just a colleague, you are the work mom many of us have turned to for advice, encouragement, a hug, and even a plate of sweet treats to brighten and help us get through our day. Your thoughtfulness and extra little touches helped make this school feel like a family, and we'll miss that more than you know. Your impact on Rutland Town School cannot be overstated. Excuse me. You've been a cornerstone of this community, and your contributions have been vital to the success of every school day. While we'll miss you tremendously, your legacy of dedication, care, and service will continue to echo through these halls for years to come. As you embark on this well-deserved new chapter, please know that you will always have a special place in our hearts. We are so thankful for every moment you've shared with us, and we wish you all the best in everything that lies ahead. Thank you, Mrs. Mock, for everything. We love you and will miss you deeply, the Rutland Town teachers and support staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Kelly. All right. Next up is the CLA update.
Tina, I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt. Mike did arrive. I don't know if you want him to talk about for community staff or community comments or no.
Did you
I
have something
can.
to add to teacher, staff, or community comments?
Just about the trip, or was that later?
That was more during the budget discussion, but I know.
That's fine. My meeting got bumped, so. I'm good.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, I got
Okay,
bumped. So
sorry,
you're
Tina.
okay.
Thank
Do
you.
your thing.
All right, so for the CLA update, according to the information from Lewis, it looks like our CLA is in a better place than it had been. Is that correct?
For next year,
For next year?
we're only seeing a very small decrease compared to most other towns. I think we were going, and it's just an estimate at this time.
The 102 is just an estimate for the CLA?
Okay, well, that's a longer discussion, so.
Okay. So I don't have anything to report from the select board side.
Okay.
But it sounds like we'll be talking a little bit more about that in the budget time.
Yeah.
PCB update?
Sure.
Sure.
Do you want Kelly to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for our PCB update, we are going to be having another round of air testing December 24th and 25th. And they want to see where the numbers lie then to know where we're going in the next round. If they're still good, that gives them a good indication that that's the source or the main source. And so they know where to go with the rest of the building. So it lies on the 24th and 25th, the air testing.
Thank you.
They're going to test on Christmas?
The 23rd
I'm
and
here.
24th.
23rd and 24th.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I will be here on
Christmas,
Christmas.
we'll be here Christmas Eve.
I will be here Christmas Eve. yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. But it's nobody else will.
Just meeting, we're redoing the gym too, so.
Right, redoing the gym.
Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, there's no new business to come before the board. I will take a motion to approve the warrants.
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. Any discussion? I actually had a question.
Sure.
On the Rutland Town student activity accounts, there was a reimbursement for fundraising for a DC trip for $100. I was just confused.
For $100?
Yeah. I was confused because that family is not in the current 8th grade trip, so I was just trying to figure out what that was about.
I remember being told, but I don't remember the specifics. So there was a $100 reimbursement to
A family.
a family for this year. Let me ask. I don't really remember.
It may have been from last year. I don't know. It was just kind of an odd, it just stuck out a
Yeah.
little bit. So I was just curious about it. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Thank you, Abby. Approval of the minutes from November 6th. Before I take a motion, I did have a couple corrections. Sue Quinnell's name is misspelled throughout the staff and student highlights on page 1. On page 2, the email service is MailChimp, as in chimpanzee, not chip. And then on page 15, it was Colin watching the webinar in November and reporting in December, and Tim watching the webinar in December and reporting in January. Not exactly how it's written there. So I will take a motion to approve it with those changes, or entertain any discussion that you have.
That motion.
Do we misspell our
Thank you,
reading
Tim.
specialist name?
Just at the, in the body, not at the top.
Ironic.
Ironic.
Ironic. was
Thank you,
the-
Tim. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Superintendent's report.
Like I said, majority of this is informational purposes only. This time of the year, it's all about budgets. There are 2 items. One, I'm just going to briefly touch back on Sarah's. I'll talk about a little bit later in her principal report. But on November 14th, I did have the opportunity to get up to the University of Vermont for the outstanding teacher ceremony. And I just want to say, congratulations to Lori Elliott once again, who was recognized as one of the outstanding educators. I know Sarah's up there as well. It's a great ceremony. It's a great event. So I just want to congratulate Laura on a well-deserved honor. And the second item is that in your packets there should have been a draft of the warning. And I know that Lewis will talk a little bit more later on about some of the language that has changed, particularly around the budget. But just to take a look at that, let us know if any changes need to be made, and then we can have that ready to go for you in January. So, okay.
Thank you. Any other questions for Chris? Okay, moving on. Principal's report.
Sure. So Lifetime Sports, we are in planning stages, so thank you to Keith Schneider, Colby Hescock, and Colin for their help with organizing that. That's great. So we'll have some more meetings prior to January. We had great participation for our parent, teacher, and student-led conferences. One update is that this will be the last year that we do an overnight trip to Washington, D.C. Due to the cost and chaperones. It's tough to find teacher chaperones that are able to do overnight trips. So I met with the middle school team, and I did inform middle school parents of 5th through 7th grade, and we're going to start looking at some day trips that that aren't as costly, and we'll ask students for their feedback, and then we'll also ask parents as well. So I'm sure there will be some involvement from parents and some fundraising, but not to the amount that has been previously.
May I ask?
Sure.
A question actually on Lifetime Sports.
Yeah.
Last year, the board approved 5 days of Lifetime Sports, and this year I noticed, and I know this is probably the second time that you've written these dates down, and it just clicked that there are 6 afternoons instead. I'm confused for a couple reasons. One, I don't remember that being addressed, and maybe that doesn't matter, but I think one of the reasons the board had only wanted 5 was to reduce the time that the kids were out of school. And then secondly, I know when the PTO was asking about donating money for an assembly, they were told no because the teachers were anxious about class time and missing any more because of Lifetime Sports. So I was just curious when that decision was made. And
Sure. So I don't remember the board approving the days, like how many days. I think we worked with PICO, and since we were late to the game, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, last year we were just planning this now. They could offer us 5. No.
Last year, so we were late to the game, and we made a budgetary decision to do 5 versus 6. But and we're basing Lifetime Sports off of historicals and what the area does, like PICO, and we're basing half the school does skiing. It's a 6-day program. Last year, it didn't save us any money. It did save busing, but we based it off a 6-day program. So And then we approved, well, I guess we never talked about it after that, and we approved the dollar amount for this year's budget.
Which was less than what we spent on it last year.
Yeah, correct.
So how is it coming in? Is it matching with the budget this year? Or,
Yeah, well, so we've been negotiating with Pico, and we also added a few different programs this year. We worked on bus scheduling.
Abby, could you mute? Thank you.
I mean, we know the budget, we're going to be under the budget. That's the goal. But we worked on some different traffic patterning with the busing, and they did the whole schedule thing like they do. So
So are the teachers all okay with the 6? Or?
We gave the dates, I think, was that in service or shortly thereafter?
Can't remember. I think it was
Yeah,
after.
we gave dates pretty early because I touched base with Colin this summer about what are the dates for the lifetime sports. So I don't remember the board saying they can only be 5 days. I apologize. I just said, what are the dates for the lifetime sports so we can let teachers know right away. So I think in our in-service slides, we had said when those dates were going to be.
So they're not worried about.
I think
Time.
to go back to your question about the PTO, that was more that we've had a couple assemblies already, and some of our teachers had said due to a couple of the assemblies that we've had already and lifetime sports, unless it's a well-vetted assembly, that other schools have said definitely go for it, just err on the side of caution, because we also have a lot of testing. So kids are tested quite a bit for both Fastbridge, Sabres. I don't think we're doing the NAEP this year, but then our VITCAP testing as well. So I had just received that from teachers. So I said, unless it's a well-vetted assembly, let's hold off on that. And I do, Mrs. Manaville and Mr. Lamar and I just met with an 8th grade student who did a great presentation with us this week, or I can't remember, maybe last week, about an assembly that she's seen a number of times that talks about mental wellness and self-esteem, and she has seen them a number of times and would love to bring them here. So I said, let's look into that possibly, but again, we just want it to be a well-vetted assembly if we're going to do it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that teachers are feeling like they're still on track with the students, and that
I
6
hope-
is
yeah.
still within the budget. 'Cause that feels good too.
Yes.
yeah, I think, and some of the reticence we had last year with the teachers was kind of more last minute. I think we had a lot of time to lead into this with Keith and Colby doing a lot of great groundwork and people expecting it to be here. And so we got 1 year under our belts. Not to say we won't have hiccups this year, but I think everyone's excited and more prepared. So they're not as anxious.
And I'd have to check. I'd have to look at our summer in-service slides. As soon as we had the dates nailed down, we communicated with our team. But I was bugging Colin this summer just because I know that teachers want to prepare. And I think anytime kids are out of the building, teachers worry. So whether it's 6 or 3, that's a chunk of time out of the afternoon where there's a lot of material to cover. And we just got to balance that with all the things that we offer the school, as well as our academics. It's tough. It's a tough balance.
If the teachers are feeling like it's too much when they get to like day 4 or 5, is it possible to just not go the last week, or?
I am not sure. I've really leaned on the Colin, Colby, and Keith that are still, things aren't finalized. So they're busing and they're still negotiating. So I don't have like final numbers, cost yet. Again, we're a little bit ahead of the game. And I don't know if that's an option or not. I know that even one of the locations last year, we got a bill after like a month later, more than what was expected. So I told Sherry I really want to make sure that we don't get an invoice for over $1,000 months later.
And like I said, we did cut the budget, so I think we cut it with the thought that it was still only going to be 5 days,
Okay.
and the idea that we could fundraise more. But now we added another day, so I just wanted to
Okay.
just make sure that we're keeping track, because I don't want it to go way over budget.
Yes.
And we did tell them an in-service. Yeah.
We did.
The initial
Okay.
in-service.
Yep.
Well, the bulk of the cost is skiing. So whether we do outside of the bus aspect, whether we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, it's the same cost. So it should be in line. So like if we can't, I can't call them up and say, hey, we're only going to do 3 days. They're the past, the lessons are all the same. But it is an extra day of busing. So that's why we're going to be in line.
Are we taking less kids this year skiing?
Yes, a little bit. It's preliminarily, I think it's 113 students, but that's ballpark. So it's better. And then last year it was in the 150, 160 range. So that's a cost savings too. Plus, because primarily because we offered 5 or 6 different things this year, a little bit more. Truly lifetime sports. Besides, we were just crunching last year, so a lot of kids got the opportunity to play tennis and rock climb and gymnastics and whatnot. So those are lower costing items that kids diverted to. So
Thanks.
nice.
Thank you, Sarah. Continue.
Is there anything else I know you don't want me to read word for word on my principal's report. Do you have any questions or anything else that you want me to highlight here? Mark Perkins, I was told by Chief Dumas, will be our new school resource officer, so that's something new. He will start here after the first of the year, January 2nd.
The HVAC repair, are you talking about that part too? The fifth plant?
I don't have the list, so I'm not sure.
Oh, so it says that HVAC repair in specials wing, admin office, and conference room.
Yep.
Is that part of the HVAC?
No, these are
just
these are
needed
breakdowns.
and
These are
not part
breakdowns,
of the
yeah.
extra?
Yep. So it was a actuator in the main office that had to be replaced because it was just pumping heat. So that's why it was so hot in the conference room. And then we had a broken bearing and shaft in the specials wing. So these were repairs.
Those are just regular maintenance.
Yeah. Thank you. And then December 15th, it says here there's a PTO meeting. It's actually January 15th.
Okay.
Sorry, I forgot to tell you that earlier.
It's okay.
And then Chris had said that you would talk a little bit about Algebra 1.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. I think there was something else here I was going to highlight. So we are starting, it's that time, it's hard to believe, preliminary conversations for the schedule next year. So one of the things within GRCSU and part of our strategic plan was to offer algebra for our middle school students. So some of you may remember that we used to offer that. So it's coming back again. So we have Bailey Sanders and Allison McNamara are on the GRCSU committee to talk about the requirements for that, what that's going to look like, etc. And then Mike is starting on the schedule already, and that will be in the schedule for next year. So algebra will be taught in 8th grade next year. We just need to work on logistics of how students get into algebra, what are the requirements. There are some standards in 8th grade math that are not covered in algebra, so making sure that all those standards are covered so they're ready for high school. And then
Sarah, can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
Who are the math teachers that you have now certified to teach Algebra 1?
Yes. Yes. And Bailey Sanders would like to teach it. She's Gardner, sorry. She got married. So Miss Gardner would like to teach that next year. So that's tentatively the plan. And the good thing is that Allison McNamara, she's teach at Middlebury Middle School, and so she's gone through a similar process before. And she's on the GRCSU committee to help organize this, which is great. So we're very fortunate. Yep. And then a celebration, if anybody has been in the gym, we signed up for Light Up Rutland County, Vermont. Cafeteria, sorry. And Kelly was here at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday. And a thanks to the PTO for a contribution to help with the decorations. And Kelly, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this because you definitely know Harry Potter a lot more than I do.
Sure.
Yeah.
If you get a chance, I'll even go down after if you want. But
Yeah.
I turned talking with a couple of people, we turned the cafeteria into the Great Hall of Harry Potter. We hung up candles. I've hung up a lot of lights. We've got a fireplace with a projector that actually does the fireplace. That'll have Sirius Black's head in it. We've got the sorting hat. If you know Hagrid, I will be on stilts dressed as Hagrid in there for the students. The students have absolutely loved it. And then I've rigged up banners that act like the house cup. And the kids have been really behaving in the cafeteria because it goes by what row you're in. And if you were the best row, the house cup goes up. And so I know Mr. Lamar had a comment by one of the students, so they've
Super excited because they got a house point, so it made
so
their
they
whole
absolutely
day.
love it. So we've turned that with a lot of lights. We've got firework lights in there that go off. We got falling stars that go off, and we got the night sky. So we've got a lot in there that we did for Light Up Rutland to just highlight our school a little bit, and the kids are really enjoying it.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks for the extra effort.
It's definitely better in person. So Shan's going to come early tomorrow morning and videotape what it looks like.
Yeah.
But if you see it in person,
It's
the
amazing.
pictures don't do justice for it.
Yeah.
So I don't think you win anything other than bragging rights, but still. I don't know if you have any other questions on here. I know I'm not supposed to read word for word, so I apologize if I'm missing things that you want me to highlight.
Anyone else have any questions for Sarah or Mike or Kelly?
Let me just ask more of a curious question as far as like the DC trip, right? Because I'm sure we'll probably all get questions about it. But so you're gonna solicit feedback from students and families, I assume, right? Or is it gonna be an internal?
Well, I think the
question?
middle school team's going to come up with some ideas for day trips, and then they'll share that with students and then with parents. That's the plan right now. But this was just officially decided a couple weeks ago, and it's just, again, in order for a school-sponsored trip, we need school chaperones, and we don't have that right now. So it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of time.
And it can, just based on like what I hear with like other schools, like that not end of year, but like end of year time at Rutland, it could change year by year, right? I mean, different classes may have different expectations or things like that, right? So what, would you agree or no? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a change, right? We didn't have this. We have for a number of years, and so some people have talked about doing like a Boston trip for the day, New York City, the Bronx Zoo. Those were some things that were thrown out for a day trip.
like I said, just out of curiosity, you know, on what was being discussed or, you know, thoughts that were out there.
I think this was 2 weeks ago where the middle school team had met and just said, let's think of some day trips that we could do.
Okay.
Yep.
Moving on. I guess we'll skip over 8th grade since we already kind of talked about that, and we'll start with finance with Lewis.
So the first item on there is the announced tuition. So every year we have to set a tuition rate for students who are non-residents who are coming to our school. This year we have more students than we've normally had at Rutland Town, so this is making a big difference. But typically in the past, I think there was only 1 or 2, but I think we have, is it up to 7 this year? Tuition
Yes.
students? So we have to set 2 rates in
10.
element.
I apologize, 10.
10.
We have 5 from Ira, 2 from Stockbridge, 1 from Pittsfield, and so my principal's report, 2 from
Okay.
Middletown.
So we have to set both an elementary rate and a secondary rate. A secondary would be just for your 7, 8 grades. I've included some of the area schools comparables as well as a recommendation. This is not, as far as for our schools, there's not really a science to this. I kind of just look at what other schools are charging, what the state average is, where we were the prior year, and kind of just come up with an estimate. The board could either approve the recommended rates, or we can discuss a different rate if you'd like. The reason my secondary rate is a lot lower than a lot of the comparables is just because a lot of the other comparables are based on 7 through 12, and the high school students are more expensive. So just because you're just running a 7, 8, I did keep your rate a little bit lower. So my recommendation for elementary school is $17,500, and my secondary rate is $18,000.
Abby, did you have a question?
I'm not sure. I'm baffled that the difference between ours and Rutland is not terribly off from last year, right? Is that Rutland's elementary or Rutland's high school tuition?
The Rutland Elementary is only $300 difference this current year, yes, this current year.
So the FY 26 announced tuition recommendation, when it says Rutland Town 16,500, Rutland City 17,300, is that Rutland High Schools or Rutland's elementary?
That's the elementary.
Okay.
And then
Thank you.
below that is the high school, or middle school and high school.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a two-part question. One, these tuition kids, do they count in our per pupil count or no?
No, the school of or the town of residence gets credit for them as far as pupil counts.
Okay. And, I mean, I have no problem with the recommendation because it seems like it's a state kind of preferred practice, but my thought moving forward, and not just for us, but for every district, is, like, we have the equalized per pupil cost, but then there's, like, you take the amount of kids we have, our budget, divide it by that, and, like, that's the actual cost that costs for a kid to come here. Or why wouldn't we set it at that number? And I know it's because no one else is doing it, but I mean, if the number's 20,000, shouldn't we be picking that up?
So there is an allowable rate that we get each year based on, we have to submit all of the data to the state, and they will give us what our allowable tuition rate is. I can tell you in just a moment what our allowable tuition rate was for last year. So and just while I'm bringing that up, so the difference between the allowable rate and the announced rate, if you've undercharged, so if you set and announced at 17 and the allowable comes in at 18, you are able to do an additional adjustment, and if you overcharge, then you have to give a refund. So Rutland Town's elementary school allowable rate for last year was $18,535. And their secondary was $18,507. And so that would be based on just your school expenses divided by the number of students you have, with a few other calculations in there.
So did we ask for more money? Since ours were lower?
We have not. Our districts have not had the practice of doing an adjustment. We have set a rate and based on a number that we feel comfortable with, and we have the going back and charging more is optional, and we have not chosen to make that to charge more.
Do you have any records for prior years, what our allowable was? Has it been like gradually rising?
I don't have those in front of me now. It would take me some time to find them.
Does it go up and down, or does it usually, or you don't remember
so
at all?
the main difference in the allowable rate is, so it doesn't just it looks at the pupils, the number of pupils at the end of the year. So it looks at your enrollment throughout the whole year based on a census that's done by our tech department. So if you've had fluctuations in your student count in the school throughout the year, it could have a big fluctuation in your allowable rates. I'm not, off the top of my head, I'm not sure how your rates have changed over the last few years. I can definitely bring that data to the board at the next meeting.
Do you have, just out of curiosity, do you have Corey Valley's allowables?
Yep. So their elementary allowable is $17,594, and their secondary allowable is $20,874. While we're on the allowable discussion and the announced rate discussion, I will also let you know that I was notified that Rutland City is keeping their announced tuition flat for next year. So that will, I was going to talk about when we got the budgets. And their allowable rate did come in less than what they charged, so we will be seeing a refund for both Stafford and for Rutland City tuition.
I'm okay with the tuition the way it is for this year.
It's like, it's our supervisory union, so it's not like us against them. It's like spreading the cost versus Rutland City isn't us. So, and so we're six students.
10.
10. We have 10.
Are they mostly secondary?
I had, yes, except for, let me see if I can off the top of my head. They all are except for, I know 2,
I do believe there are some
Stockbridge,
secondary.
Pittsfield, and Middletown are all secondary. I know 2 from Ira that are elementary. No, pardon me, I think all Ira are elementary. So 5 elementary and 5 middle. So the town paid, since they don't have an elementary or a middle school, they pay Rutland Town to come here.
I feel like going up 1,000 in the elementary, any more than that just seems weird or high. And then our recommended for the secondary was pretty close to our allowable. So I'd rather not have to give refunds. So that's why I like to keep it the same. But Jeff, did you have any thoughts?
Nope. I'm good with that if that's what you want to do.
Okay. Abby? Wait, okay. Tim, Colin?
We don't have to burn a lot of time. I was just saying, if we're under the cap, presumably the cap's not going down, and in about 30 minutes we're going to be arguing over 10 grand. That's 10 grand right there. And last year we were chopping tables. So financially speaking, in this environment, when we're literally coming down to talking about thousands of dollars of what we can control, I'd rather be a little bit closer to the allowable rate. But I'm okay. It's just terrible to be talking about $9,000, and some of these are not in our SU that I'm finding out that are sending here. So I mean, if there's a maximum we can be charging, I think we should be close to it. But I don't want to spend a ton of time on it. But just like I don't want to be talking about tables in 20
I think
minutes.
we can always go back to it when we're doing the budget if we need to.
You want to just table it for now? And we can-
Yeah, why don't we just table it for now, if that's okay with everyone?
So moving on to budget. So in your packets was the second draft of the Rutland Town budget. Just a few changes in the budget based on either new information or feedback from the last board meeting. So the budget you have in front of you, in the summary of changes, we'll go through the summary of changes first. So there was some discussion as to where you wanted the budget to come back. But I did highlight just the first 2 lines. So before we're adding the repairs into the budget, which we'll go into in a few minutes, the budget was down 0.4%, which was a $38,000 decrease, and that's education spending that I'm referring to. After the repairs, bringing it to the 3% increase in education spending, we were able to add $350,000 in repairs into the budget. Before I go into the repairs, let me just highlight a few of the other items. So the SU approved budget numbers are in here based for the assessments. There were some changes to the tuition estimates for the tuition that we are paying out for our secondary students. Vocational tuition, I did update those numbers. It is still an estimate at this time. We have not received the official 6-semester rolling average yet from the state. So my numbers are based on the estimates that I received from Stafford. That is resulting in a $40,000 increase. So at the last board meeting, we were looking at a budget that was still down at that time. We had discussed many options at that meeting as far as because we had such a large surplus, utilizing some of that surplus so that when we looked at FY27 budget next year, we weren't starting with such a decrease in revenues. So at that meeting, I believe the consensus was for us to come back with a increase in education spending at 3%. And in order to do that, look at what are our top priorities for building repairs and add those as individual items into the budget, so that we can utilize some of that surplus. And then the following year, when we look at FY27 budget, we would have a reduction in the revenue, but we could also take those expense lines out. So we'd have both a reduction in the revenue and the expense, and therefore not causing a spike in our tax rate for the following year. So I met with Sarah and Kelly, and we looked at the 5-year plan and identified some of those top priority areas. And I took from his 5-year plan the amounts that would fit into that $350,000. And I will turn it over to Kelly so he can talk a little bit about his priorities and the 5-year plan.
Sure. So my priorities are always going to be health and safety and security. And if you look at, I've got them highlighted from green, blue, yellow, and red. Red being, something that's just a nicety, not a necessity. The green is, you're going to see, that's more the HVAC. And when I say HVAC, and I've got some history over here, I don't believe we've had a time when we've done air duct cleaning.
It has been done. It hasn't been done since I've not been here.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's part of that new HVAC updates would be to have people come in and do a duct cleaning, do some updates so they're a little bit more efficient. Same thing we did with the unit ventilators years ago, about 4.5 years ago. So we'd have everything a little more efficient and everything up to date. And then if you're going to there, I mean, we're going through the PCBs right now. My next thing would be the asbestos. Try to get rid of what we have left of the asbestos in here. And that way, you'd want to do that before you do the cleaning of the HVAC. That way, you're not having residual go in there. So those are the main priorities in my part. Then you get down into security. Yep, we have some windows that we could do to the guard, the window guard and stuff like that. But I would say the HVAC and asbestos would be my main ones.
I noticed on the 5-year plan that the asbestos was broken up into 2 main parts at $125 each. But then the asbestos that fixing it now is $190.
So
that part. So is that?
So his estimate is on the 5-year plan would be the total cost to fix it, which I believe is $375.
$375, yeah.
And so there's 3 sections on the 5-year plan of
Okay.
$125 each.
Yeah.
That's
However,
one of the sections.
however, if you take the $350 that we have to work with, HVAC was his number 1, so take the $350 minus the $160, that only left us $190,000. So it's not enough to complete the full project to replace the flooring, but it was the number 2 priority area, so it's covering approximately half, a little over half of that project.
But then we still, if we do the HVAC, then we still have some of the asbestos that we haven't gotten to.
Yeah.
Correct.
And you had also mentioned before, when we were talking about doing the 2nd floor and adding the flooring to the, or
Yes.
whatever it was,
To the bond.
to the bond, thank you, that it was cheaper to do it all at once
Yes.
than to do it piecemeal.
Yes. Because you got to do your air testing and everything, and they charge you for each time they have to do it.
So if we did it all at once, would the $375 be cheaper?
For the asbestos, yes.
Yeah.
My recommendation would be to do, this would be my recommendation, is to do everything in the primary and pre-K and the open wings, and then you have that whole section done. And then you're going to have to look at, because then all we would have for asbestos is from the main office here. I think most of the stuff is done down the middle hallway, because the hallway was done.
That's what's done, yeah.
And then we've got a little bit outside of the music area, and that would be all that was left. So that could be done at a lower, it would only be a small part, because we also have to consider what they might do for PCB this year as well, which would be the middle school section, I would believe, because that's where the remainder is.
So would it be better to wait for the HVAC till the PCB is in the past?
Well, the good thing is if we did concentrate on the pre-K, primary, and open wing, we've done the PCBs for the most part in most of that area where the asbestos and stuff like that is. And then you're talking about fewer HVAC. You've got the ones for pre-K, and then I think we got 5 or 6 for the rest of it. So again, you're cutting it in half, but you're getting one whole section done and up to
So
date.
this amount is for just that one section?
No, that's for the whole school.
The 375.
The 375 is, yeah.
For the flooring for the whole school, but the 350 for next year, the one, sorry, I don't have it in front of me, the 160 and the 190, what part of the school is that all for? Is that
The
just-
190 is just a placeholder. That's what was left of the 350. The board can decide to go up or down on that number. I mean,
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
have an estimate as to how much of
and,
that?
and these are estimates right now because it's been a couple years since we've gone out. Because if you just keep going out to the vendors, eventually they don't take you seriously.
They don't
Because
call back.
you keep saying, hey, here's you're dangling something in front of them. So if we know we've got X amount of dollars, then we go out and get, we've got to talk to one group that does the testing and then the other group that does everything else and say, okay, here's what we got, here's what we can do, and then they're going to let you know. You want to do it sooner than later because they're already booking out in advance. So.
But if the board decided they wanted to make that the priority, they can probably use the full 350 for that project and hold off on the HVAC. There's also some capital maintenance funds we can utilize if you wanted to do both projects at the same time.
And we also still have more money in our surplus too, don't we? Because wasn't the surplus higher than
The full surplus is in this budget.
including the SU 119?
Correct, that's in there as a revenue.
I see it now.
Maybe able to utilize some of that tuition refund from Rutland City for a portion of those projects as well. But while you're thinking on that, I can move on to the tax rate piece. So I know at the SU meeting, I talked a little bit about this and said that we wouldn't have numbers by the board meeting, so we wouldn't be talking about tax rate. But we did get some estimates from the state, and so I thought it would be good to just go through these. I do want to emphasize that these numbers are estimates. Some of them I'm still using last year's number, and I'll go over a little bit about that. So to calculate the tax rate, we take our total expense, and then we subtract our local revenues, which is anything other than property taxes, to calculate our education spending. Education spending is the total amount that we are asking the taxpayers for. So that's currently at $10,635,000, which is a 3% increase. We then need to look at our weighted pupils and divide our education spending divided by our weighted pupils to get our spending per pupil. Currently, I'm using last year's number. We have received preliminary estimates for our number for next year, and it looks very positive. I don't feel comfortable with using that number yet, so I think we should utilize, at this time, still look at using last year's number. I feel confident, hopefully it should stay there, or not go down, but based on those preliminary numbers, it looks really good for next year. They did tell us they will change, I just don't know to what degree. So based on using last year's number, we're looking at a spending per pupil of $13,823, which is a 3% increase. We then take the property yield and divide the spending per pupil divided by the property yield to get our equalized tax rate. So if you've read the tax commissioner's letter, he's recommending a yield of $8,553. You cannot, just by looking at this, compare last year's yield to this year's yield because there's a change in the calculation. So at the very end of the session last year, they passed a new bill, which you take the yield, the actual yield, and you divide it by the state average CLA, which is estimated to be 72%. So if based on the numbers that to reverse engineer the yield, it looks like the yield has increased approximately 20% to get this 8,553 because the estimated statewide average CLA is 72%. So if you take 9893 and you backtrack it, you come up with a yield that's approximately, I think, $11,873, which is a 20% increase. It doesn't make comparisons easy, and we had the same issue last year because they changed the calculation last year too with the weighted pupils. So we have 2 years now where you can't really compare the prior year. Using the tax commissioner's recommendation, we have an equalized tax rate of $1.61, which is a 19% increase. We then apply the H850 incentive. That was that incentive that we received last year due to Act 127. It is 80% of our total incentive that we received last year, which was 17 cents. So this year it's 13.6 cents. That brings our equalized tax rate to $1.48, which is still a 24% increase. Again, you can't really look at those percentage increases yet because there's a change in the calculation. So then we look at our CLA, and on the sheet you can see CLA went from 75 to 102, and that is because that calculation that we adjust, that same factor that we apply to the yield gets applied to our CLA, so that we apply that 72% to our actual CLA to get to our new CLA of 102. This is just an estimate at this time. So based on the data that we received from the state, Rutland Town's estimated CLA is going to be 75% divided by the 72%. And I'll give you the exact number. 74% divided by the 72 gives you an adjusted CLA of 102. So I think the good news here is that where many districts are seeing double digits decreases in their CLA, Rutland Town CLA drop has slowed, and you're only seeing approximately 1.4% decrease in your CLA if these estimates are accurate. We won't have the actual numbers until the end of December, so hopefully that is accurate. But based on applying that adjusted CLA, we're looking at an adjusted tax rate of $1.45, which is a decrease in the tax rate of 7.73%. And that is based on the budget with that $350,000.
Can you say that again? Because I think you lost a lot of people on them before, but I think the last part's important for you to stress for the public to understand that.
Based on pupil counts not decreasing, which I don't believe they're going to, and the proposed property yield and the estimated CLA, we are looking at a tax rate decrease of 7.3%. 7.73.
I'm just concerned. How did they come up with? We were at 75% last year, and now we're at 102. And where in like when they're adjusting,
like math mumbo jumbo.
when they're adjusting things in the future, like is that going to hold true? Or are they going to be like, wait a minute, we need to. We can screw around with the yield and the CLAs where we haven't had an assessment. Probably the third biggest property value town in the state had a huge reassessment. How are we getting a discount now? And we got smashed in the face last year.
So you're not getting a discount. In my opinion, it's just a shell game. I think there was a lot of focus on CLA last year, and the state decided let's take the focus off CLA, and we'll complicate things and really confuse people.
Yeah.
And so now they're applying that state factor, the 72%, and getting people's yields high or people's CLA higher, so they're not saying, oh, why is my CLA so low? And also adjusting that yield, which nobody really understands the yield, so it doesn't matter what that number is. And so the net factor is this, if you didn't apply that 72% factor, you would get to the same outcome. There's no change at all. I think what's really like I said, what's benefiting Rutland Town this year is your actual CLA only decreased 1%. I know Pulteney's decreased 15%. Proctor and West Rutland were, and I'm going to be going over these with the boards later this week. Many towns are seeing double-digit decreases in their CLA, like we have, like Rutland Town saw last year, and like many towns are seeing. And so where many towns are seeing double-digit decreases and yours didn't, that's where you're benefiting. You're seeing the benefit of the increase in the yield of the 20%, but not seeing the decrease of the CLA where many people are. And with the tax commissioner's letter where he's talking about a 5.9% increase in the tax rate, that's taking into account increases in spending, but it's also taking into account many people's CLA dropping. So that's why that factor is not impacting Rutland Town.
Call the select board back and tell them we don't want to be on the list anymore until next year. I'm inclined.
I don't think it matters if we're
Thank
on the
you.
list or not. They can't do anything
Well, I don't
about
want
it
to be on
anyway.
there anymore. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
The waiting period. So.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lewis. I mean, looking at this just further inclines me to like go back and take more of the surplus and finish the asbestos. I mean, these two numbers are so fabricated that we don't know what's going to happen next year. To say right now, I mean, in a sense, what Lewis just told us is, we increased our budget 3.6 or 3%. 3%, and because of the yield and the CLA.
Can I pause you right there because you're going to explain this and I'm lost. So, if we increased it 3.7%, but that's with giving that revenue back to the voters,
We
right?
increase it 3.02% with using the surplus
All of
towards.
it.
Not all of it, no.
Some was revenue and some we did the one-off. You
Yeah.
put the revenue in and you have an expense for 1 year, so we're not adding expenses.
Trying to get some of the capital.
Right. Can you just say, can you say that again? Because people
So
are going to
there's
ask me.
there's a total of $545,000 of one-time money in this budget revenues. So there's a
From last year.
there's a $424,000 surplus and then $119,000 of SU surplus that was being refunded. So
Okay.
that's one-time money. If we were to end with a zero surplus this year, that money would not be in the budget for the following year. So we'd be starting $545,000 in the hole to start before you even
Correct.
look at expense.
Yes.
So the board decided to use some of that one-time money with one-time expenses so that when we look at next year, we're not starting the budget process in the hole, we're starting more on a level field.
And how much of that surplus did the board decide to use?
Well, that's what we're discussing now.
Okay.
So right now we have 350,000 in there towards asbestos and HVAC. That's what it's written, but we haven't formally decided that that's what we're
Right.
doing yet.
So
Okay. So
our
now
total expense is up 7.33, but because we have other revenues, we proposed at our table here to spend 3.02% more on education in Rutland Town. That's our first draft here, second draft. So we're going to spend more money and assume we have the same amount of per pupil count. They haven't changed the calculations, but we don't have the exact numbers. But we're going
Right.
to assume we have the same amount of kids last year. So we're spending more money, right? And we have not gone through an assessment. and flush it all down, we're getting less of an incentive from the H850. Last year we got 17 cents. This year we're getting 13.6. Each year that's going to phase out to 0 after 5. So we propose to go up 3.02%. We got less of an incentive than we had last year. Our equalized tax rate last year is 1.18, so what we voted on. And this year it's 148. So that's up 30 cents. No, 20 cents? 30 cents. It's up 30 cents. That's what we're proposing. And because our CLA is now 102, our adjusted tax rate's going to be 145 versus last year, the last budget passed was 157. So it's a 12-cent decrease to our property taxpayers, and we propose to spend more money. Because the property yield, which is manufactured in Montpelier, and the CLA, those two factors are in our favor this year.
I followed everything. Thank you. You should really be a teacher. We need subs.
So now, we've decided to spend more money. We're telling our taxpayers, your tax bill is going to go down 7 point, assuming our estimates are correct, of the guidance we're getting from Montpelier, your taxes are going down.
Well, the money you're proposing to spend is on much-needed building repairs and maintenance. It's
Yeah.
not just on
Correct.
new frivolous things. It really is on maintaining the facility. So I just want to state that as well. So
It's being fiscally responsible.
yes.
But my thoughts on fiscal responsibility when two variables are way out of our control is it more prudent to then look at this and say, do we want to spend more this year to fix things we need to fix? Because next year those two variables could be out of our favor. I mean, that's a huge swing in the CLA. Huge. And last year
I
we
really
got...
don't trust it. I feel like they're going to
Right?
be.
I mean-
We made a mistake, by the way. I mean, I don't
Would not
understand.
surprise me.
I don't understand how they came up with this formula after last year.
It was part of that last bill that was.
Yeah, but why didn't it apply to our budgets last year? For this year?
They're retroactively looking at the buckets of money and what we need to spend and who they want to spend
It
to.
did apply to our budgets last year, but the budgets were already, all the materials were already out. Like I said, it has zero net impact.
Yeah.
Because you're adjusting both numbers by that same factor.
So it doesn't matter.
So it doesn't impact tax rates, it just impacts the communication to the public. And our communication was already out to the public.
So, thank you, Louis, again. Hearing what I just heard, and again, I don't want to be frivolous with money, but I think from what Kelly was saying and the importance of asbestos and how that cost goes up if we don't remediate, is we should probably do some of these, maybe we add a little bit more in to finish off that whole project. Because other than that, I think we built a
The
good
whole
budget.
project should be cheaper than what you had here, because doing it one time instead of 3 times will save some money.
It's altogether possible. These are estimates.
Yeah.
But
I remember you
think
telling us
one part
that
could be
before.
higher, one part could be lower. Again, they're estimates until we go out and say, yes, this is what we have, we're ready to do it.
And again, it's a one time. So we're not adding 3 teachers because we have, we're doing stuff that in a year that the formulas are on our side that need to get done.
We gotta take care of our facility for sure. It's
And we
not-
could still,
Nothing's cheap about it.
and still turn to the taxpayers and say we got a decrease in your tax rate.
Before we decide on this, the 7th grade trip, we do not have that in the budget right now, correct?
Correct.
And as of right now, our policy states that we would pay up to $500 towards a 7th grade trip. It appears that the cost of the 7th grade trip looks like it's going down. And Mike, since you're here, do you want to talk about why?
Yep.
It's,
Where do you want me to?
I would. Where do you want to?
Well, I don't know. Do you have?
You can sit here if you like.
Sit next to you.
Yeah.
First, do you have any questions about my retirement?
I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh, you haven't gotten there yet? Oh, oops. Sorry. Thought you did. So the 7th grade trip, just like the 8th grade trip, we don't really have staff that are able to go overnight. And in talking about the best way to serve it, a lot of our costs were reduced because the overnight was $60 per kid for the overnight. So we're not doing the overnight, and we're only going to do 2 days of our team building and our ropes course and our low elements course. So that's why the cost has gone down significantly. I was just on the phone with them today. As a matter of fact, I actually got in touch with them and pretty much confirmed that the cost, excluding busing, was, what it was, 104 or whatever it was, excluding busing per kid, not including the busing costs, which are almost as expensive as the trip itself. So we're planning on 2 days so that more staff can attend, which makes a great transition from 6th grade into 7th and 8th grade, because they're changing teachers completely. So this is a win-win in a lot of ways for us. It's a good time to make that change. And that is the cost with the busing figured in for 40, what do you figure, 40?
41, because we know
41 kids.
one kiddo coming.
So that would be the cost for our 7th grade trip for next year. But it's different, but it'll be the same. So if that makes sense.
It makes sense. I think it's a shame that we're getting rid of 2 overnight trips in one swoop. But
You know,
I hear why. I just
Yeah.
think it's a shame, because I do think that that kind of experience is really great for kids.
I'm 100% for. I'm like the last of the Mohicans, as far as, if I could say that. I really think the overnight is incredibly important. However, it is incredibly demanding. Yes, DC is 5, we're 3. Well, you're on 24 hours a day when we're at this camp. There's no chaperone, there's no guard walking around. I mean, we're literally on all day. And that, for people in our school, we are going younger because us dinosaurs are leaving. So they're starting families, and being pulled away is very hard for people nowadays to, leave their families to go on the trip, even though they understand they're valuable. And I do too. But I also agree with going for the days and trying for the days to see how that's going to work. Because that camp experience, I've been on it for 14 years. That's one of my favorite parts of the year, is going and watching them grow on that trip. But like everything, times change. So that's kind of what we have proposed. That's not saying that it can't come back like anything, but we're not eliminating the trip. We're just changing, we're moving it around a little bit to see how it will work out. And I'm confident it will work out. And I plan to go on it, even though I won't be here. So I don't know if you want me to talk about that now or not, or...
If you want to while you're here.
While I'm here, and then I can go home. So I am retiring at the end of the year. You have my letter, I believe, is in your...
Say no.
If you can't say no. Well, you can, but then there will be nobody in the classroom when they show up, which would be interesting.
We actually don't get the letters anymore.
Oh, you don't? Oh, so I wrote my letter that I wrote to Chris and expressed that I am retiring from teaching. I'm still fully staying on as the athletic director, and with the 7th grade trip, the end of the year eyes program, I can't remember what else I put in there. A couple other events that are really important to me that I still want to be involved in. That's, of course, if you allow me to do that. I don't want to give a lot of those things up. For those of you that don't know, I'm going into another full-time job with the rec director of Rutland Town. So that actually just got approved by the board an hour ago. So you have a vote on that, but that's where I'm going to shift my retirement to. 35 years is a long time. Chris, I think we're about in the same boat, 35 years?
I'm a little bit behind it, just a little
bit behind me.
We
So
keep putting more years on poor Chris.
so 35 is a long time.
Yesterday, yeah, I think I put 35 on.
I've been in it since 1990, and I've had a great 23 years here, and it's been awesome. And I can't thank you enough for allowing me to do what I've done and be me. I mean, Jeff was there in the beginning. I think he's the only one that was there in the beginning. So this is a great place, and whoever's next will do a fantastic job. But I do want to stay actively involved, and that was part of my letter to Chris. And he can share that with you if you want. It's more than, but that's my intentions moving forward, is still being active with that, if you're okay with that. Ultimately, that will come down to you, if you're okay with that. So that is my plan moving forward. But I do appreciate everything you have done for my family and me over the years. My kids went through here. I'm going to my daughter's graduating as a doctor tomorrow from UVM. So that's something to, first one in the family, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I want to thank you for everything. If you have any questions, the kids know, most everybody knows at this point.
There's a lot of pictures of Mr. Rowe around the building if you haven't
Yes.
seen.
It's just getting
Very
interesting,
sad.
but,
Yeah.
if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, but truly, I think that's a good transition for the trip. And it still has that valuable experience that camp offers to kids. So, however you want to make it work is great moving forward. But,
Well, thank you. And thank you for your
No
time and
problem.
service to the school.
all righty,
We'll miss you.
no problem.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Rowe.
as you embark forward, there's a significant, obviously, overlap between rec and athletics and activities.
Tremendous amount.
And I think there's an opportunity for us moving forward with, being handcuffed on how we fund education in the state versus how we fund rec to continue that partnership and help the town best pay for it. If we can park things on certain sides of the aisle.
You lost me, I think. What do you mean?
So the rec budget's paid out of the town budget.
It's out of this pocket of mine.
Yeah.
I live in the town, and then the other one's paid out of that pocket.
But
they're
this
all
this
connected.
one's shared by the state.
Yes.
And sometimes we
Yeah.
pay more than we should.
Yes.
And we can't just pick and choose, but with recreational sports, we can. So
Yeah.
there's fields involved, and it costs us more to do it over here when we can do it over here.
Yeah.
Maybe we should be doing it over here.
There's a lot that I do for both
Yeah.
behind the scenes. That
I'm saying as a taxpayer, I'd rather pay $1 than $1.25 for the same outcome and not have to
Totally
give money to
understand.
a
and
different
I'll be the
district.
same person as that point going forward because that will be my job. So it'll be consistent what it's been for the past. I've been there, whatever, since 2013. I was within the part-time director for rec. So it's been 11 years in that position, and I've run the pool since 2004. So it's been a while, and it's me, and it will stay me. And so hopefully we can work together as we have. That won't change. So if you need things, we'll see what we can do. We'll make it work, bottom line.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. All right, well,
Thank
thank you
you.
guys. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Michael.
You too.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe.
Thank you, Mike.
Oh, thanks, Ab.
So then, just going off of that, do we want to put in the 7th grade trip for the amount that he thinks it'll cost, the $6,000? Since we had agreed to pay for it, or leave it off? Fine with which way?
We're putting it in.
Putting it in? Abby?
Yeah, I'm good with it.
Putting it in or leaving it out?
Putting it in.
Okay. Putting it in. Colin?
I would quadruple it, if you ask me. I mean, so we don't know what the future looks like. We're hearing some new things, and I don't know the history of the policies that the board influences how the trips went. I only have my experience from 30 plus years ago, where obviously the world is a different place. I think it was a lot more parent oriented back then. I don't believe we had an administrator on the trip or forced a whole bunch of teachers. So I think we're going to have something for the 7th and 8th graders. We spent $17,000 last year. I mean, I'd
I want to
say
say it was,
For the 7th graders?
was it 20,000? We
Ginger-
had a
Ginger
large
Cook was
class
not
though.
five. It was-
We
This
also
year
had
was-
50-something kids.
Yeah, it was
52 kids.
Like this
Yeah.
year, and so 2 years ago, when we had our big bubble class, our 8th grade class. We went 3 nights, and we had a huge class. So yes, you spent a lot of money. Then this past year, we had one of our smaller classes, and we went to 2 nights. So the cost was significantly reduced just by the sheer number of the kids, and we reduced the trip by a night, which took out a couple of meals, and a night which reduced part of the cost. And only having 28 kids, or whatever we had that went, we were down 20 kids. So it was a lot different.
what I'm saying, as a board in this environment, we spent more money, and an equity of just, not targeting those classes, and we don't know what the future holds, is maybe creating a bank or a student fund for the future, because, I mean, we're talking about, I don't know how long the DC thing's been going on, but you know, we're going to have parents that had kids that go through that and did it, and with kids below that, with the expectation that they were going to be going, and they're not. And they spent a lot of time and effort fundraising for that, and then we're going to maybe shift it to, okay, you get to do a day trip to Boston, go fundraise, and they're going to be like, why? So maybe we should be taking some of this budget and banking. We have no idea what the future holds, but I have no problem. To be clear, I have no problem with this cost at all, putting in the budget, but I'm saying maybe we should be putting more in and having it sit in a fund when we decide, or the staff figures out what they want to do with 8th grade. Because it's a complete upheaval of what we've been doing.
But we didn't have anything in the budget for 8th grade. And just adding the 7th grade was new.
But we did it.
We did it with the notion that we didn't want them fundraising for both,
Right.
right? So now we're taking away.
Well, they might
The
still have to
8th grade.
fundraise, but it wouldn't be for quite as much money.
Correct.
But it's still, I think it would still be nice to have a way for kids to experience some culture outside of the school community. I think it's important. It goes along with our strategic plan to keep something in there for a middle school trip, in addition to.
I think that's true, but I also think we have to make sure that it's not coming at the expense of parents. That it's not coming out of pocket. I think that's super hard nowadays.
Right, so that's why, I think that the question is, do we put in 6,000 or more? I think we all agree to put in for the 7th grade trip for next year.
If I can, if I were you, I would encourage, like Colin, I would set up a bank, whether it's 20, 25, with the expectation going forward that you have 7th grade and 8th grade trips that they can look forward to moving forward, whatever those trips are, that at least the cost could be deferred because you have money designated for those grade levels moving forward. I don't know any of the logistics. I'm simply saying it's, I can see Jesse.
So just to address that, we can't put money into a fund without voter approval.
Right.
So we would need to have a separate line item on the ballot for that.
But we can put the 7th grade trip back in?
We can
without
pay for
that?
the trip for that year.
Yeah.
We just can't put money that rolls
So basically,
over.
if we don't use 20,000, then the money goes into the surplus and, yeah. So. Yes?
This is tied into more of the 8th grade, so would you like me to wait on that, or?
You can go ahead.
So I have communicated with Sarah, and I know some other parents have as well. So I'm hearing that the middle school team will meet, and then the students, and then the parents. And my question would be, is if we could have a parent of the incoming 8th grade students meet with you, Sarah, to talk before or during that process, as opposed to at the end of the process?
I'm happy to meet with parents at any time, but it doesn't mean parents get to choose which field trip
Absolutely.
they're going to
understood.
go on.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I will say I was very surprised at I did hear from a couple of parents that were disappointed, but it was very much outnumbered by parents that were grateful that the trip is not continuing. I was very surprised, just that it is a huge expense. It's a lot of fundraising, a lot of work. They felt really pressured. They were anxious about this trip coming up. And unfortunately, the last few years, I would say since COVID, we've had quite a few kids that choose not to attend the trip. And that has increased every year. So I'm happy to meet. I spoke to I think 3 parents, but there was triple that of parents that said, "Thank you. I think a day trip is great."
Yeah, I can
So
definitely
I just
understand.
I just want you to know that if parents do come, there may be some on the other side too.
No, I don't think it's about DC. I think it's just about being part of the process because it is such a huge change from that to something completely different. So I think understanding that parents wouldn't be making the decision, but would be part of a conversation would be nice.
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
With all that in mind, I think it's important to have this conversation because I'm getting a lot of calls, but to be clear, like this board doesn't decide that we're doing a 7th grade trip or an 8th grade trip. We just decided if we're going to help fund or not. And so that's at the purview of the school, the administration. And if we're going to continue that, I don't think the board really needs to be involved unless we want to talk about money as opposed to our budget. I'm okay with approving $6,000 to add back in the budget for the 7th grade enrichment trip. I'd propose that. I don't know if we did a motion. I said I'm good with that.
So just 6,000 for next year.
Well, it doesn't sound like there's an avenue to park money anywhere. So.
No, but if we have it as a line item, then at least it's there, right? So.
I mean,
if we were, I would feel more comfortable with 10 just to hold the line. And that way, if they do adjust it or something comes up a little higher than the estimate, it's in the budget.
So I have a question. So we have under, co-curriculars, I think a couple years ago, we asked about field trips and how much we pay. So I have that Google sheet that was shared with the board a couple years ago. So we pay for one transportation trip. So students pay for the field trip, but we cover the cost of the bus. So would you just include it in there? Just increase co-curricular transportation?
We'll go in one of those lines, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be a separate line, but knowing that $6,000 would go towards 7th grade for Chinjacook, and then maybe 4,000, depending on the year, could go towards an 8th grade trip. So it could just be the line under co-curriculars for middle school trip.
And I actually think we've overspent that line at least the last year, if not the last 2 years. So.
The transport was overspent, the other line was not.
The co-curricular, yeah. But that's the one that's used for field trips for all the classes, correct? So if 7th grade is going to be 6,000, I think increasing it a little bit more just to give a little bit more wiggle room for field trips wouldn't be a bad thing.
Yeah.
You okay with that?
Yep.
So increasing the co-curricular transport, or is that where you're going to put it?
I would put portion of it in transport and portion in dues and fees.
So the 6,000 in dues and fees for the 7th grade trip and the 4,000 for co-curricular transport? Is that what you would suggest?
Looks like the busing, according to this, is less than 2,000, so I would put 2,000 in transport and the rest in dues and fees.
Okay. Is that because the dues and fees are also used for any other trip, field trip, or?
The dues and fees?
Yeah, on the co-curricular, there's a dues and fees line, that would pay for like entrance fees or the cost of the field trips.
And that's where we're putting the lifetime sports right now, correct?
And the school has, I mean, if they're gonna underspend one line, overspend another, they have that flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
And we can we've been changing this line for the last few years, so once we have a steady number, we can
Especially since COVID.
Yeah, we can evaluate
Biggest
it.
thing.
All right. So is all the board okay with that? 8,000 in the dues and fees and 2,000 in the transport? Abby?
Yep.
You're good? Okay. So by consensus, that will work. So then we're back to the facilities improvement. So I would personally like to do the asbestos all at once if we can. I think it'll save money overall.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Good, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
And then I also had a question about the HVAC. When you do update that, are you going to be doing smart controls?
So most of them already have smart controls. So it would just be if there's an update in the,
Software or something? Okay, great.
My recommendation would be to just table this for now and see.
So we see all their
where-
other
see
numbers?
Where the CLA and the pupil numbers comes in for next month, because if those change, it could change our discussion completely. Or at least we have some idea as to where we are now, and it's just changing that one number. I would just table it and kind of see where those numbers play out, and we can make that decision at the next meeting.
That works for me. I had a question about the preschool tuition. Do we anticipate that continuing to be higher than what we have in the budget?
So our number this year is a little bit lower, so that's why I didn't bring it all the way up to our actuals.
So it'll be less than this year?
Our actuals so
budget?
far, based on our estimate, yes, it's at 69.
Okay. Thank you. I was just curious because we've overspent the last 2 years. I didn't know if maybe things had caught up or whatnot.
So based on the discussion we had on budget, do we want to come back to tuition and adjust those numbers, or leave it with the recommended?
Do we have to decide tonight on the tuition? Because it just kind of seems like,
It's due to the state by January 15th, so I think our next meeting is
January 14th.
So I would prefer to have that, and we're not talking about a huge impact. It would make it a lot easier if it was done tonight.
I'm fine with leaving where it is, but if you guys
I
think it should be adjusted, then we need to adjust it.
I feel like we went up 1,000 in elementary and only 500 in secondary, and we were 500 off. So I would be okay going a little closer to the actual,
So 17.5 and then an 18.5 for secondary?
or 18.2 or 18.3, just to make sure that we don't go over. Something like that. Help pay for our field trips, like you said.
If the tuition goes up, do you think we'll lose tuition students?
No.
The
The town's paying for it. No one's
Their
paying out of
towns are
pocket.
paying
They're picking.
for it.
They're picking the school they want to go to.
And we're
This
still
is the-
below the average.
and this is the most we've had. I said last year we had 7. That's
Yeah.
the most we've ever had, and this year we have 10, which is awesome.
We could do 18 for both. That increases our revenue for all the elementary students. It keeps it simple. It's a flat 18,000.
Then I don't have to always ask you how many times do I chat you. How much is their tuition again for elementary, Sarah?
I'm okay with that. Make it simple for this year and then go from there. 18,000 for both?
Yep.
I would need a motion for that.
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tim. So Tim has put a motion on the table to announce our tuition at 18,000 for elementary and secondary. Any more discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
So it was unanimous. Thank you, Tim. Is there anything else on the budget that you wanted to discuss tonight, whether in this session or executive? No.
How many tuition kids do we have in the budget right now?
7.
7. Do you know how much that increase just gave us back?
No, he
So
already
we have-
has 7. Oh,
We have
we just upped the
100 we have
amount of money we're getting.
120 in the budget, so.
Did you really budget for 7? Because I didn't think you did.
he did.
Told you we'd have 7.
Yeah.
You really?
So you think we'll have 7 next year too?
No, no, don't quote me on that.
6,000 if that's the budget.
What's our lifetime sports budget?
20.
20.
I'd like to take 5 of that and put it in lifetime sports. We're asking these towns to spend more money for these kids, but we're already spending it on them. We nickel and dimed our kids. They get the enrichment as well. It's just using that money better to go direct to the kids, not just saying we're going to take it and do whatever we want with it. So I'd like to.
We have 3 more tuition kids that we didn't count for.
I believe there are one or two that are graduating, and I was
Yes.
I was a little conservative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think there's at least 4 that are graduating off the top of my head.
So it might only be 6 next year.
Yes, I can double check.
So maybe we want to go back to 6.
Well, the 5 from Ira are all elementary school.
The 5 from Ira? I don't know, that's not correct.
One of the Middletown is in 8th grade.
And one's in 7th.
One's in 7th. Pittsfield's in 8, and the 2 Stockbridge are in 8, so quite a few are graduating.
So maybe we should only put 6 in the budget?
I mean, I'm not, let me double check.
I'm only showing 3 that are in 8th grade. There's 2 from,
Can you share the
White.
list with me? Do you have it, Louis?
I'm showing 1 from Middletown and 2 from White River.
Which is Stockbridge.
The one from Pittsfield is in 7th grade.
Give me last year
And
for
then there's
Pittsfield.
one in Middletown. I don't have that grade.
Oh, right, because Pittsfield doesn't have a school, so I think she did come in 6th grade.
And then the 5 from Ira. So we should still have 7 if they all continue.
Let me double check.
We can bring that back for next month.
Okay.
That works for me. So it sounds like we'll get some more numbers next time.
Just in time.
Yep. So is everyone okay moving on from the budget discussion right now? All right, thank you.
Tina, I did have your answer for that. The parent lost the check.
Oh,
So central office asked to, that's what it was a while ago. They're like, oh yeah, I don't know.
To
what to do with
reissue
To
it?
reissue the check. So it's because
Perfect.
they over fundraise, and that's what we did.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
Budget communication. I know that our engagement committee met.
We did?
Yes. Is there anything that we as a board want to do to change the way that we've communicated the budget in the past for this time? I know Chris and Lewis have done a lot of work on the website, and we did put the QR code into the Circle newsletter to get onto a newsletter for us. I checked today, and we still have no one that signed up. The Circle newsletter did not go out, but when someone enters the website, it does pop up now, so you can join just by simply going to the Rutland Town School website and putting your email address into that little pop-up, but no one has done so yet. So I don't know how useful the newsletter will be quite yet.
I'll get on there. Mike and I will.
Yeah. The Circle, like I said, hasn't come out.
Right. That's true. Yeah.
So that might be helpful. And then Chris and Lewis, are we still planning on sending a little brochure to everybody, every
There
voter?
should be a copy in the packet just to take a look at it.
I'm sorry, I didn't see that today.
We're not sending it out to residents. We were sending it to board members to be able to spread it around.
And I think that's right.
Yeah.
Board members are making sure that's will be posted at like the post office at Market 32, Hannaford. Other
Transfer
places.
station.
Correct.
We could get like something like this in I don't know, like a tray or something down by the gym, like once rec games start. There's a lot of people in and out of that gym on Saturday rec, and that hits like parents, grandparents, cousins. It kind of hits that spectrum. So, I mean, I think that'll be helpful for community.
Did you need?
What's that?
I mean, I think the sad reality of the one overarching thing that came out of our meeting was that, technology's technology, and there's a certain group of folks that will always use that, but part of this job is morphing into like the old school, like we're still gonna have to hit the ground, which we did not do until we were backs up against the wall last year. So utilizing the transfer station, I plan to engage the parents that were with us last year. We had a lot of parents, teachers that went out and knocked on doors. We should be doing that. I mean, but honestly, if this turns out to be the numbers that are coming down, the message is a little bit easier this year. Guess what? Your taxes are going down. But we should get in the habit of, I know that's not why we signed up, but if we're going to be passing budgets, it's got to be in good and bad times that we go out and present that to the community. We had a lot of people help us do it. So I think I'll continue to do that, and, using this kind of flyer, and just have some parents and friends of the school distribute it so people can't say they didn't get it. And hopefully we can keep pushing people into the technology space and using your smartphone, use the QR code. But it'll be interesting to see the feedback, because I bet you if these numbers stay true, it'll be interesting to see the feedback we get from the folks that just no last year to like, okay, well, we upped the budget, and are you happy now, or do you want to, so I think we should continue to engage, especially the folks that said no, so we can continue to get them momentum, and hopefully this is a positive year. But I think boards around the state got very comfortable in 10 years of no issues of like, okay, we're just going to get into the vote, and I wouldn't want to just take our foot off the gas.
So is this the final brochure?
No, that's just it's a draft.
Okay.
So
Because it will be bigger. It will fill up more of the page.
Yes, I think it was just that. So how it works. So we can fill the page out. I know that as part of the SU budget communication, there also is a draft. There's a letter that goes out from board chairs, which I'll share with you and the other board chairs. It's already basically done. But it's just an invitation for public feedback. It just lists all the different ways that individuals, and when we send that out, we can also send a copy of that QR code as well. So, but I'll be sharing that with you and the other board chairs by the end of this week.
Thank you.
I think once we finalize the budget, the flyer we had last year, we can just replicate that with this year's data.
So that sounds good. Any other comments, questions? Any more questions from the community? Okay. Personnel. I will take a motion to approve the contract recommendations. We have one professional staff making a horizontal move, Amanda McIntyre, and one pre-K para support staff for information purposes only, Brittany Sharon. Or Sharon.
Brittany Sharon.
Thank you, Abby. Any discussion? All in favor?
Right.
Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Retirements, we have Mike Rowe and Lisa Lonis, our school nurse. I'll take a motion to approve their retirements.
So moved.
Thank you, Colin. Any discussion? Out of curiosity, when will you start posting for these positions? After tonight, or
No, I probably won't post until January.
January?
Yeah. And we can't, for budgetary purposes, we have to have PE. We have to have a PE teacher for all of our grades, and we have to have a school nurse.
Right.
So I think some schools are talking about maybe not filling some certain positions, but those are have-tos. They have to be filled for
Absolutely.
education,
That's
school
why
quality
I was
standards.
hoping you were going to start soon.
Yes. I was just gonna wait. Usually, that's early, usually February time, but I will post them in January for sure.
Do they get stagnant like a real estate listing? Like if you posted it and no one really saw it?
Yeah, it's a game. Like if you post it, if you want to post before February break for sure.
And then with the nurse, because that sometimes draws people that aren't teachers, right? Are you only putting that on School Spring, or are you more widely distributing it?
So that's through central office. So I give that to Christine. And a couple years ago, again, he mentioned COVID, which I shouldn't because we're so far beyond that. I asked her about Indeed, So we post on Indeed now, and that is supposed to filter into School Spring. And I sometimes question that because I have a tough time getting into Indeed. And I actually had just followed up with Chris and Christine from last month. I would love to get our postings on Front Porch Forum.
There's a cost though.
Gotcha.
If Christine would do that for all the boards, because it's different than individual boards doing that. So that's why. So if
Gotcha.
Sarah wants to take on Front Porch Forum
I
and post, she could, but for Christine to do it on behalf of, it becomes a different
gotcha.
level of and then we have the same issue with our board chairs with Front Porch Forum, that individual accounts can do that, but when one person takes over all, it's a
Gotcha.
different umbrella, so.
but
we're not opposed to that, but,
It's just we're having, like everybody, a tough time finding people. So we're right now we're short a special education paraeducator. We had somebody that resigned immediately, and that put us in a really tough position. So we're short a full-time para, and we're always short substitutes. So I had just shared, I'm really struggling to find people, and where we have received a couple of phone calls that have seen it on the sign out front. We have hired some people that have just driven by and left me a voice message, say I was headed up to Killington, and so if anybody has any other suggestions, please let me know. I didn't realize that about Front Porch Forum.
I know I've seen some other school districts advertise in the newspaper. I don't know.
We've done that too, especially for custodians. And I've asked Betcha about bus drivers too, because they're just in dire need. I cannot tell you of a time where I've hired somebody through the paper.
I don't know where you would go for nurses. I just can imagine that there might be nurses interested in a school position that don't know about School Spring. That's my only point about that.
when we've posted for school nurses, we've had a large number of candidates who apply through School Spring, so they do check, because it is a very specific individual who's looking to work within a school. So, then the biggest problem we've always had is just salaries, where Rutland Regional will throw money at them to to bring them back in, and so we get outbid by, healthcare that we can't compete at times. So
But
those have been issues.
They
that we've
get their
had.
summer off though, right? So.
Well, yes. I mean, there are perks.
Yeah.
But like I said, sometimes when they see the bottom line, it depends on situations. Family where they're at. Childcare. There are a lot of other factors. So we'll see. But we have to be. We do recognize that here in the SU, the state of Vermont, we're all looking at shortages around subs and high needs positions. So it's just bus drivers. It's very difficult. So we're trying to figure the solution out.
And I do have some relatives and friends in hospitals, so I've already told them about this, and I may have already talked to some great nurses that are already in schools that may be interested too. So that conversation's starting.
Great. Thank you. So, Colin made a motion to approve the retirements. Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
It's unanimous. Vacancies are in the packet.
Yeah, can we interject in regards to vacancies if you don't mind?
Yep.
Okay.
So I am not returning to Rutland Town next year. I've decided to move in a different direction, to pursue a doctorate in education, and take steps to move in that direction a little more efficiently. It's proven difficult to try and do it during this, and so I've just made that decision recently, and again, like I echo, what Mike said. This is an amazing place, incredible people. I absolutely love who I work with, and it's amazing. So it's purely just my own reasoning and kind of personal goals. When I came on, I had mentioned I wanted to pursue a doctorate. It's my ultimate goal, and working in that field of academia. So I'm going to move in that direction. So just wanted to let the board know. I don't think that there's a letter required. This is the end of my 2-year contract, so I just wouldn't be given another contract after this year, per my request.
Well, good luck with that. Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Okay. Have you been able to get candidates for the other positions so far that are listed on here?
No.
No, not yet. So you're still looking for a office?
Oh, sorry, pardon me.
Administ-
We are interviewing, we do have candidates. We are interviewing for our admin assistant for
Mm-hmm.
Pam's replacement tomorrow afternoon. So we have some candidates that are coming in for interview tomorrow afternoon, and then we have slated next week some second round interviews of those candidates. So our hope is that we can get somebody in here before Pam, because she's done on Friday. Next Friday's our last day. So I'm hoping that she's done a lot of cross training with Sherry, which has been great. But to have somebody just come in for a couple of days, if we can fast track things. But as soon as she gave us her letter, it was her decision. Typically after board meetings, when people retire, I ask them, can I send an email to the team and put something in the newsletter? And Pam asked me not to specifically. So she wanted to communicate that with families. So she said, and with our team, with our staff. So she had said, please not let that come from her. So she did put something in the email newsletter last week. So those of you that were wondering, that's why those were her wishes. And of course I honored them. Mike and Lisa have said you can tell anyone you want. So, so we hope that we have a candidate to present to the board for our admin position at the January meeting. And I know that Mike had an interview, or no, that was preschool para, pardon me. We don't have anybody for our GRCSU special ed para position. So we are still actively looking to fill that position.
And did that just happen? Because I didn't see a resignation for that.
It's a GRCSU position,
Oh.
so maybe you approved it at a GRCSU board.
Okay.
So that
Maybe,
was prior
yes.
to Thanksgiving break.
Yes,
So
we did.
that person had sent an email and said, I'm not returning. And
Okay.
we didn't have any notice.
That's a shame.
Probably around midnight or
Yes, so
something.
we are scrambling. It's just the week before vacation is very tough from a behavior standpoint for kids. Kids struggle. It's historic, and we have Friday the 13th coming. It's usually like a full moon, like it's all happening. So it is all hands on deck.
Best of luck.
Thank you. And Sherry has been our nurse too. So she's been cross-trained at doing her job and also nursing duties with anybody else that's able to pitch in, because we haven't had sub nurses every day.
All right, so moving on, chair report. I just wanted to let everyone know, particularly our policy committee people, that there is a new policy work plan that Eric has developed that'll just help us keep track of the policies and review them on time and just be consistent. And that was brought up to the SU board just as a new tool to use to try to stay on top of all the policies. So I don't know if you were told that in your committee or not.
We haven't had a meeting.
Haven't had a meeting for a while. He said that we're basically, you don't have to meet as often because we've gone through all the backlog of the policies. Is there anything to add, Chris?
No, I think it just has a plan moving forward about how to handle policies moving forward. So there is a classified them like group 1, group 2, group 3, and then we'll just handle those groups as we see fit. And then if obviously if something comes to the VSBA, just or during this next legislative session, if a policy comes out of that, then we will bring that into the fold as well. So it'll be really just making sure we're streamlining, we're meeting, but we're not just meeting to meet. So.
And I did ask Christine to put that in the bucket, so it should be online if you wanted to take a peek at it. And did you have a chance to see the November webinar?
In an effort to save time, I don't think I need to really speak this evening. No, I didn't. I just logged in though. I requested that, so I'll report.
If you'd like to report on it next time, you may. And I think Tim will be reporting on the Get On Board webinar that was being held during our meeting tonight. Next time, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just happened. 6 to 7:30.
Yeah. And then in January, there is a webinar on superintendent evaluations, and I don't mind taking that responsibility because I've been working on that a lot with the exec committee anyway. So I'll be happy to report back in February on that. There will be 2 open seats come March. Abby and our terms are up. So if anyone is interested in running please let us know. We'll be happy to answer any questions. And I believe Abby is definitely not running again, so there's definitely an open seat, and I have not made my final decision either yet. So let us know if you have any questions. No policies to discuss. Our next meeting is January 14th at 6 p.m. in the library. We still do not have a date for the pre-town meeting. We were just told that it had to be January 21st or after. So as soon as we know, I'll send a note to everyone just so that you can put it on your calendar. Any other teacher, staff, or community comments before we close? Okay. Seeing no need for executive session, anyone have any good and welfare?
I am excited for tomorrow night's, my grandson's first concert.
Very nice.
That's gonna be awesome.
Have you been before?
What's that?
Have you been in a while? Or a
I haven't
t-shirt?
been for quite a few years.
It may be cold out, but do not dress warm. It's very hot in the gym.
I will say this
I've
will be
learned
the
that.
first time I will miss the kindergarten and fourth grade concert. I will miss everybody. My kindergarten son has his concert at the same time in Orwell, and he has been singing Jingle Bell Rock since, I don't even know,
October.
wearing his fancy Christmas blazer. So I will miss everybody, but I cannot miss my son. He is beyond excited for that. So.
Well, enjoy.
Thank you.
We had a PTO Parents Night out on Friday night that we had about 40 kids here. Older kids helping out with arts and crafts, and in the gym with the younger kids. Watched some movies, had some great food, had some parents helping. It all went really well. It sounded like the kids really had a fun time. So, and thank you, Kelly, for helping us set everything up.
I'm excited with what Lewis proposed, that all the new numbers. Honestly, it's like staring March in the face. It's going to be a little different. So I hope that's okay.
I know.
Hope that stays.
Me too.
Takes welfare in a whole different context, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's hoop season for my family, so we're excited for that to kick off. Wes will be playing rec and getting the opportunity to play out with the 7th grade boys, which will be a great experience for him. And I'm coaching the 5-6 boys, which is exciting. There's 15 of them, so that's excitement is a good word. I think that's the best word I can use. So it's great. It just makes I'm not up on the hill skiing often, so it makes the winters in Vermont go by very quickly to just have activities going on all the time. So excited for that.
Abby, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, just I'm looking forward to the winter break with the kids, and just want to wish everybody a safe holiday and teachers get some rest and relaxation over those couple of days off. So we know how much work you put in every day.
I would just like to say also thank you to one of our Rutland Town reps, Chris Howland, being in the audience tonight, just listening to what's going on. It's really appreciated to keep the communication open, and appreciate you being here.
They're as confused up there as you are down here. We had a joint physical presentation where they did go over a little bit more of this equivalent student formula. They're not multipliers, they're adders within the parentheses for those of you who are math. But I don't have assignments haven't come out yet, but we'll do what we do. We have a meeting with you at 1 on a Zoom.
On Friday, yes, correct.
Friday, that'll be, all the legislators have been invited to, all the legislators within our group of GSU.
The Southwest Vermont Superintendent, so it's Bennington, Rutland, and a few.
Paulette, Holdney, yeah.
Right.
Medicare, yeah.
Yep. So it'll be a good meeting. So.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, I will take a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank
All
you,
in
Billy.
favor?
Aye.
Being here.
Aye.